Welcome everyone to RTS Masterminds. We are back again with another episode. Today we'll be talking about ZeroSpace's early access launch. It's been a little while, but we've gotten some games in. So how about we do some quick introductions? Brandon, if you want to start, perhaps.
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, everybody. Brandon here, Wayward Strategy. Um, I run that blog and I'm the lead game designer on Tempest Rising. I've worked on a lot of other RTS and strategy type games as well, in a greater or lesser capacity, but those are the two high points of my resume so far. And Balint, go ahead.
Sure. Hi, I'm Balint, lead systems designer on Titan Quest 2, but with a lot of RTS and strategy game history. Worked on Total War, Warhammer 2 and 3, Halo Wars 2, and Age of Mythology. And for fun, I do like YouTube content about multiplayer stuff in RTS. I've got a tournament project called Meta Place as well, which I run. So lots to do. And this exists.
Yeah, we all keep ourselves busy here.
Yep. Don't allow myself to be bored. So ZeroSpace. That
Yeah,
didn't
so this
bore
one's
me
been
either.
cooking for a while, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think I played a build of it, I want to say 2021 or 2022. I can't remember. I'm old now. My
Was
brain's
it that
filing
far back?
storage.
No way.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think there
I
was
think so.
something in 24. No.
I played a pretty early build. Um, I was invited to play
Okay.
uh by the head guy Marv.
Hmm.
Um, so I played a little bit early, provided some feedback then. But yeah, it's been cooking for a while, and I think they even announced and had some media out there not too long after that, 2023 maybe, um, before they had big tournaments or any marketing pushes. So it's been out there for quite a while, slowly building steam,
Well, quite
and now
importantly,
they've.
they've had the Kickstarter, right, which is what really
Mhm.
gave them a very nice injection. I think they raised like 1 million, right?
Wow, yeah, I think so.
That was
Let me
roughly the
see if I can.
value.
It was 500,000.
Hmm. 500,000 then. Okay, now
That's
we know.
sorry about the delay there.
Yeah, that's still a pretty good amount, and for a smaller team, it can make quite a bit of difference. They were
Yeah,
always
absolutely.
going to do an early access, and now that that's here, we can sort of see a little bit more than what they've had in the last little, public beta test. And they already had enough to sort of, get the multiplayer games running. It's got some pretty good networking to it. There's now
Hmm.
4 factions instead of just the 3 that they originally had, which is kind of ambitious for, a smaller scale project. It doesn't feel small scale, does it? There's a lot of
No,
stuff.
that's one of the big things I wanted to point out about this project actually is they have done a lot with I mean we don't know exactly how much total funding they're working with, but they don't give the impression of being a really big team, but they've done a lot with their with what money they do have. Like they've got the campaign, they've got the world map, kind of global, I guess galactic war they've got going on. They've got a lot of content. Um,
Yes, and all this in just early access. So who knows how much more they'll actually have in the finished product. Well, hopefully it works out for them because they are having some frictions with with the player base at the moment. Although the review scores are at the moment pretty good as far
yeah,
as
yeah, mostly positive. It's
players
I think
go.
76% as
Hmm.
of right now.
It's
So
not
yeah, they
bad,
did a
especially with early
yeah,
access.
it's pretty.
Like you're never going to ship full quality stuff with an early access. That's never how it works. You build the content, you put it out as soon as it's serviceable, and you let the
Hmm.
players at it. Let them rip it apart if they don't like it, and then you can go back and fix things up. That's generally the idea behind EA. It's not for everybody. It's not for me because I'm working on an early access game myself, and if I play an early access game that's not my game, it feels like I'm working. so, so I didn't play too much, but I got a little bit into the Grell. What faction did you play?
So I was really curious about the Zol, their fourth faction that they added for early access. Prior to that, I was playing a lot of Legion. I felt like that was the most mechanically interesting faction. Um, but I've really gotten into playing the Zol since their early access release, and I think I was really skeptical because I love Earth 2150 and Earth 2160, but my least favorite faction in Earth 2160 is the aliens, um, who kind of thematically are related to the Zol. They have the kind of merging, upgrading
That's
sort
right.
of feel to them. So I was really nervous because I was like, I've not seen this done particularly well, but I actually think that they've gotten a pretty good start on that faction. I'm excited to see where they go with it. But as of right now, that's been my favorite to play.
Yes, they've also got this whole, uh, expanding area on the ground that you can just
Hmm.
uh, paint and then use it as a sort of not warp in, but similar to that. Uh, if you think in StarCraft terms, basically your rally pointed units will pop up at the point in the painted terrain that you've got, which
Okay.
is nice. It
Yeah,
saves
that
on
is pretty cool.
like walking time and whatnot. So I
It's got
think
a
that's
little bit of
interesting.
like defender's advantage
Yeah.
situation going on there.
Yeah, but then the Grail
Um,
also have the creep like mechanic, so uh there's a lot of Zergisms.
yes, I'm not super deep into how those all work, and I wasn't aware of a specific mechanic with their network or whatever the Zol terrain type is called. Um,
I forget the name,
so
sorry.
well, so that's one of the minor issues with the Zol right now is their tooltips aren't finished. So it's the power node, just the description for that is power node. Um, and it doesn't really provide a lot of information. Um, but overall, I found them relatively easy to use. You select your army, you get the upgrade menu once you unlock the structure that allows for your units to upgrade each other. I can't remember it's flat. I can't remember what it's called um, off the top of my head. Um, and then you just push whatever hotkey and they start combining automatically. Um, so it was simpler than I was worried it was going to be. I was worried it was going to be a bunch of Archon type, selecting things and
Oh, just going back for a second to the Grell though. I had a pretty interesting experience with them. I'm a Zerg main in StarCraft, so I really enjoy my swarmy boys, and they're certainly that, but there's also plants now.
yeah, and the Grell don't exactly work like the Zerg, even though they look like them. There's a
Oh,
lot of
well.
commonality,
The
but
tech tree is more like Protoss. Like you have your tier one,
right,
tier two, tier three uh, production buildings, basically, and then you
yeah, and they have their like empowerment
do
mechanic
it with that. Exactly.
going on. Um, Yep. So that's actually interesting to me. Again, watching all these kind of games trying to do the Blizzard thing. We had Crossfire Legion, which literally, they had a faction that was supposed to be like Terra, and a faction that was supposed to be like Zerg, and a faction that was supposed to be like Protoss. You had some overlap with Stormgate, but I think ZeroSpace, even though they've like the Protectorate look Terran and the Grell look Zerg, they are still trying to do their own thing mechanically.
I think they're their own
Um,
thing, but also with blends from StarCraft. So
mhm, mhm.
you have a lot of these returning mechanics, sort of that you can instantly latch onto. And maybe for some people that will be a friction point because I've seen this before, and for others it will be like, oh yeah, this is great. I used to love that about Zerg, Protoss, Terran, whatever.
Um, so let's try to narrow in a little bit because I'm sure we've got people watching who haven't played Zero Space yet or haven't played much. Um, and talk about like mechanically how it works,
Sure.
and then maybe from there we can go into the other game modes we've tried and
There
some thoughts
are
about.
so many big mechanics. So I'll start with the heroes, for example. You can do some others, but it's not just your normal. RTS, you do start with a hero that you can select, right? And then you have many options for your specific faction. Now they're a little bit all over the place right now in terms of balance, so don't be upset if you just get absolutely run over by another one. Some patience will be required here. But hey, you go out with your hero, you have the capture points on the map, and all of them have some protective creatures around it. Like usually it's just really easy creeps that you will run over. You have to kite them a little bit to not take too much damage, but it shouldn't be much of an issue. The problem comes in when the other hero happens to show up in the same place, and you have a bit of a dance between yourself. Who gets the kills on the creatures, and then who gets to capture the control nodes, because it matters, because there's this global power system, which you can explain, I suppose.
Sure.
It leads right into it.
So there are what I would call top bar abilities, and they literally sit on the top of your screen, that you purchase with the points that you gain from these control towers. For the Zol, mostly they're not super impactful. Things like taking a merged guy and turning him back into the component units. The Legion have some pretty nasty ones at the top level with their monolith summoning, which is basically just a big defensive turret, or their Emperor summoning, which summons a giant, super unit with a sword for about a minute or something before he disappears again. So they range from little things like minor boosts to game-changing abilities. Like the Zol have the option to tech up to an orbital laser that you can pull around the map with your cursor. And in my Discord, we've talked about it a little bit, and it's been referred to by people I've talked to as like a win more system. For the early part of the game, I'm not entirely sure how true that is. But certainly with some factions and some tech paths, you definitely get the situations where if you're allowed to sit on these turrets for a long time, or these POIs, the points of interest, for a long period of time, it can definitely snowball pretty fast.
Point of interests are already that by themselves, even if they just give you very minor benefits. And now there's games that offset that, like for example, Company of Heroes, where your manpower will dictate a little bit of how much income you can have. So even though you get more of the special resources, you're gonna throttle yourself a little bit if you pump too hard. But in ZeroSpace, it's a pretty much flat economy like that. So that's interesting.
So one thing that ZeroSpace tries that I think is interesting, StarCraft is a great example of this. Every base location has one or two Vespene geysers and selection of mineral patches. Every one. With ZeroSpace, what they're trying to do is their Vespene, their tech resource, is actually a pink crystal, and they're spread out all over the map. And you only have so many harvesters you can summon to go harvest them, which varies by faction. The Legion have up to 15 because they've got these little worker guys that run out with a pickaxe. And then the Zol have this kind of big O-shaped UFO thing that sits on top of it and kind of pulses. So they're trying to bring resourcing out onto the map more. And they have these points of interest. So in my writing, I've called that the enemy as obstacle versus enemy as objective. In StarCraft, your enemy is blatantly, clearly your objective. Your whole point of being on the map is to destroy your enemy. In Company of Heroes, that's a great example of enemy as obstacle, where you're really just trying to control the POIs and you're trying to do that better than your opponent. And if it looks like you're not going to be able to do that, or you're way ahead, you can try to steamroll them by taking out their base. But mostly you're there on the map to do a thing, and your opponent's also trying to do that thing, and you're competing over the objective. ZeroSpace is trying to split the difference between those two things, where your enemy, destroying your enemy is still your objective, but on the path there, you also kind of have this these series of things they want you to do on the map to try to build up the power to be able to defeat your enemy properly. And I think it probably would help them to lean into that a little more because, like you said, um, it's kind of a flat system right now.
Yes, yes, yes. So you clear out those creeps once and then that's it, right? The heroes, they don't have any scaling to them. Like that's very much on purpose
Right.
because they didn't want to make a hero RTS. Um, so if anyone's
Yeah, the
freaking
heroes.
out because of the heroes, you don't really have to.
It's
They do not
it's
scale into
more
the late game.
it's more like a commando unit or maybe
Mm-hmm.
even a hero unit from Dawn of War 1. The function of the hero, I think, mostly is to give you something to have some sort of micro skill expression in the early game,
Yeah.
right? And then they kind of become a utility thing. Like the Zal hero, um, you can merge him with your base Zal units, and his abilities change based on that. So he can end up like throwing your roller guys or gaining other abilities based on what he's merged with. It's actually kind of neat. So the economy is something I wanted to talk about with the game. It's fairly scaled back in terms of macro layer. There's not a lot of decisions that go into it besides building factories and building basically whatever your faction's supply depot is. Um, but with Azal, they have some interesting little touches. Like you can put your units in the turrets to change what the turret does. You can put them actually in your tech structures to have your tech structure function differently. Um, so neat little fiddly, and I really like the fiddly decision making part of RTS. Not necessarily high micro, but just things that you can do and think about that change your gameplay experience. Um, and I feel like this is all probably out of all the factions at this point can give me that feeling because of the ability to put units into things to change how they work.
Meanwhile, Grell, make the map green.
It gets a little overwhelming with a lot of that grell grass going on.
Yeah,
There's some.
it's very visually disruptive, I have to say,
Mhm.
but it is fun to spread creep. So, it's a balancing act. As far as the core economy goes, however, there is no need to make workers, right? Like they
Right.
just kind of are connected to your regular bases and your expansions. And they get auto generated. So you don't need to do anything. You just let it do its thing. Um,
Yep. You build the expansion and then wait, basically, right?
you wait. You can go in and kill them, however, and then it takes forever to come back. So it is
Hmm.
very painful to lose the workers, but they're immobile. You don't have to invest into the action economy of that as you do in many other RTSs. So it's definitely a little bit different, but there are so many systems that compete here. So first off, you have to babysit your hero. Secondly, you have to watch those control nodes and go after them every now and then when the other guy takes it away. You have to do your basic production stuff as usual, but it's a float economy, so it's a little bit more relaxed regarding that. Like you can pre-queue units, sort of.
Yeah, and buildings.
And
It'll so
buildings.
if you place a building that you don't have um the resources for, it'll put down like a yellow ghost of the unit and it'll say queued or something
Yes.
and show you the amount of resources that you need. And then once you get those resources, it'll start the production of the structure, which I think is actually nice. It's a little more friendly than what like StarCraft does.
Oh, I was gonna say I
Um,
freaking hate it. Uh,
oh, really?
yeah, I can't stand it. So I actually rage quit my last game because of that. So there was a problem with just generally getting the buildings made. I had money for days. It wasn't the problem. It just wasn't gonna be made. And
Oh,
because
interesting.
of the ghost system, you have no system for cancellation. They
Oh,
have
huh.
to figure something out here because
Yeah, you really should be
cancellation,
able to cancel them.
yeah,
That's very important.
it kind of is, right? And it's like I don't see a way right now. Maybe I'm being silly, but how? It's not clear in the UI. So at the very least, that is the feedback for me. But
Yeah.
I just like to have a guide that I can send out to do stuff. It's
Mm-hmm.
simple, it's understandable. There's a one-to-one correlation with what you do and what happens. Whereas just ordering it from a global menu and then the game arbitrarily picking still a worker to go and do it. That is odd to me. I don't like it.
Interesting. Yeah, I guess from my perspective, coming from um, you know, Company of Heroes, Command and Conquer, I don't really mind the global menu, and I don't really mind waiting for things that I've ordered previously.
Oh, but those are different.
Um,
Those are different. You see, like the buildings come out of the off the ground. That's okay. What my problem is here is they still use a worker, especially with Grail. At least I'm not sure if that's the case for every single faction, actually, but
so
with the Grail,
how
they
it
do
works
send out
with
the worker guy.
the Legion spawns an autonomous like drone that flies over and turns into the building, and then the Zal, I think it just appears. It just
Okay.
summons in by itself. And I don't remember. It's been a while since I've done the Protectorate. I'm not entirely sure how it works there, but um, at least with the two factions I've been playing most, there's a separate system for how they're ordered. Um,
Yeah, but then anyway, I did have some late game matches, and there's a lot of mechanics here, right, that we're describing. So even though you're
right,
like
we
not,
haven't even gotten into upgrades or
there's upgrades.
the well, so it's pretty cool. I like the upgrade system. So once you unlock your tech building, um, you get multiple upgrade options for your units. I think at least for the Protectorate and the Legion, that's how it works. For the Grell, it seems to be different. I'm not the Grell. For the Zal, it seems to be different. They have global upgrades that apply across the board. And then I think as you slot your different basic units into the upgrade structure, it changes the benefits that it gives.
Oh, very interesting.
Um,
Okay. With the Grell, it's
yeah, so
just AB upgrades for um,
okay,
specific
yeah, that's how
units.
the Legion and the Protectorate work. You go into the tech building, or there's a menu that's it's you can surface, so you don't have to click on the building, and it gives you multiple options, and picking one would exclude the other one, and then there's like a higher tier upgrade. In some cases, I think those are also mutually exclusive. Um, but for the Zalia, you'd get this little menu of upgrades that are common across various category of unit. It's kind of like your damage and armor upgrades from like StarCraft or Warcraft 3.
And that's not all. Like there's this level of upgrades, and then there's the other set, which is to do with your
The
global progression.
right,
And that is also one of those mutually exclusive pick systems that as you gain your global XP, you'll be going through this, and there's like several steps. Some of them unlock just passive uh, boosts, like you'd expect technologies to do. Some of them actually grant you the top bar abilities. So
hmm
there's a lot to go around there as well, and you're kind of juggling these four systems. And there are mercenaries. So it's just so many things. The mercenaries are kind of like in the StarCraft campaign, where you can call them in periodically, and then still have to pay for them, but they're an instantly produced set of units.
yeah. So how I think of it is in Emperor Battle for Dune. In the campaign, you had these minor houses like the Fremen or the Spacing Guild or House Ix or the Tleilaxu. And in the campaign, you had to do side quests to earn um, the ability to use their unique structuring units. And then in multiplayer, you would just pick which one you wanted. Um, and here again in um, ZeroSpace, it's basically the same system where you have these. I think it's five or six minor factions, and you pick them. You get access to their one or two unique structures, and then you get access to their 4 to 6 unique unit types. And over time, charges build up, and each charge represents one guy you can summon
That's right.
at a time.
And there's
And
like two
some of
tiers
them,
of the build, or two types of the buildings. So because you
yeah,
can have that many.
right. So it depends. Like there's the one with the crab guys. You have two different buildings. There's a couple where the building's actually a unit that can fly around. There's one where it's a building during the day and a unit at night that you can move it at night. So they have these neat little kind of unique elements to them, and they change what heroes you have access to. They change some of your global um, player level upgrades for your faction. So there's a lot going on there, and I think there's definitely ones that are more useful and ones that are less useful. But I think it's an interesting system, and as they refine it, I'm looking forward to it. Originally, um, there were some concerns because they were just added. I think the units were just added to your factories originally. So you built the prerequisite structure and then you built them out of your factories, and people didn't like the that system, and the Grell spawning vehicles out of their out of their plant structures was kind of weird. But now they actually come out of whatever building you've is associated with the faction. I think it's pretty well done. I am overall at this point happy with that system.
You select them pre-game, by the way, just like the hero,
Yes.
which is, I guess, a little bit interesting because it lets you customize your faction a little bit to your liking. But there is one major downside. I also enjoy what they do and how they mechanically work. The part I don't enjoy is that all the factions can access all of them. And I believe that detracts a little bit from the asymmetry that they're generally trying to set up with the factions themselves. Like the mercenaries, if both players have them with different factions, then the factions basically lose a little bit of their uniqueness because of that, in my view.
Yeah, I
So
see
I'd
what you're
really love to
saying.
see them becoming exclusive in some form. Like if I'm Grell, I want to have access to a selection still, right? But I want to choose from stuff that my other factions opponents can't do.
See where you're coming from. I haven't done or watched a lot of multiplayer. My bigger concern was just some of these units are just better than
Yes,
others. Um,
and they come
they
on
don't
pretty
ever
fast, right? Like,
they don't ever become a huge portion of your army. I found when I was playing Zol, they ended up kind of because my basic units died so fast.
no.
So the only ones that stuck around were the mercenary units. I wish I knew the names off the top of my head better, but it's the crab guys where you have the two different factories, and one factory produces the crabs and the other factory produces the Mayan style priest guys. But
I
the
use the crabs too.
well, they have a perk that lets them automatically respawn when they die. Um, so you'll lose them, and then they'll spawn back at your base, and then you can have the second wave come out again, which is as the Zol is really nice because again your basic units are very fragile.
And the Grell
Um,
can like promote them, so it's like even better.
oh my gosh, oh my gosh, yeah, that's nuts. Um,
It takes a moment.
but
They go into a cocoon and then they come out
mhm,
all pretty after that.
that's funny. But I see what you're saying. Like the Raiders, I think they feel more like a Protectorate or Legion thing.
Yeah,
It's a
that's
little
it.
weirder to have them associated with the Grell. Um,
And then you come in with your protectors crabs. Are you kidding me? Like that is so weird.
yeah, I don't necessarily mind that because I think it gives you more overall gameplay variety, especially since your unit rosters, and this is something I did want to talk about. Right now, I feel like your unit rosters are kind of how few units can we get away with giving you, right? So the Zol have their three basic guys, and then I think they on top of that they have another six for a total of 9 unit types, which is not a ton. And then of course you have up to I think up to 6 from the mercenaries, which starts to kind of approach more of what you'd think of in terms of variety. Like StarCraft had around when it first launched had around 15 unit types per faction.
Do you think they have enough at the moment?
I wouldn't be upset if each faction got a handful more unit types. I I'm person. I mean, with I personally like to have a pretty deep roster, and we're kind of getting philosophical here in terms of game design because I do like a big roster, but I also am hesitant to say that I don't really like unit replacement. So, like in Supreme Commander, where you get to the end of the game and you're basically only using tier 3, maybe with a couple of tier 2 units mixed in, because the tier 1 over time just
I
become
just want to make sure that
irrelevant.
the tier one stuff plays a role that is exclusive to them and therefore maybe even
Generally,
economically
yes.
necessary, like in StarCraft, and then it's just more diverse because
So
of that.
it's a tough balance, but again, I wouldn't be upset if they gained, 2 to 3 unit types per faction. I don't think that's fundamentally necessary, but for me, it would be nice. The big thing, honestly, the biggest thing for me, um, during the beta, I believe it was the Legion, they had this mechanic where some of their top bar abilities would take one of their thralls, which is the basic kind of tier 1 infantry, and kill it and turn it into a turret. Coming out of beta into early access, they changed that, and these turrets are just something you build now. Um, and originally, the Terror Tower, which was like one of their big things, you built the Terror Tower, and all of a sudden it starts boosting everything around it. And now the only function of the Terror Tower is that you want to build your big units, your tank, your Terror tank, and the Dreadnought right next to it because it speeds up their production. Um, so I feel like both of these things have gone from something that's kind of thematic and interesting and gives you something to think about, and they've kind of become a little more bland. Um, and to me, one of the things I like most, I think I said this earlier in this this episode. What I really like is in an RTS is being given unique things to think about. So the Legion trying to get teched up so they can build these terror towers, which then become kind of an Artosis pylon that you have to protect before, where it's going to nerf your whole economy around it, your production facilities around it, or where the Zol and the Zol still feel this way. I mean, I'm hoping they don't lose that. Where I'm, you know, making all these little guys and I can put them in I can put one in a turret and all of a sudden now my turret's a healing turret and I can pop him out and put a different guy in and now it does AoE damage. Um, I like these little things to think about that make the factions feel unique to play, that give you interesting decisions to make. And I feel like ZeroSpace is trying to give you lots of interesting decisions. Like, I'm leveling up. What am I building toward? Um, I'm upgrading my units in a certain way that kind of makes my playstyle more unique. I like some of what they're doing with that, and I really want to see some more of that in kind of the core faction decisions that you're making.
Right. I mean, as far as those kinds of decisions go, you're basically looking for macro mechanics that are uh, interesting but not like absolutely crucial, right? Uh, and I think if they perhaps went away a little bit from creep analogs and is that try to do something with that Zol techie ground stuff. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
that might be interesting if it was more slot based, for example. Like you would
Mm-hmm.
have certain layouts to build your buildings into. Think about slots of Halo Wars, right? Uh, and you would gain different effects based on what kind of buildings you place there. That could be whole lot more interesting uh,
Yeah, I think
than
that's I think
warping
that's
reinforcements, basically.
right. No, I think that's a great way to think about it. But really, with the Zol and the Legion, I think there's some really unique ideas there. For instance, I think the Terror Tank is a great unit. It reminds me of like the Marv from Command and Conquer, except instead of slotting engineers or whatever into it, you're just upgrading it by itself. Um, that does lead me to another quibble, I guess. I don't know if you've experienced this, but when you've got a lot of units right now, especially the bigger ones, like I saw this a lot with the Legion. with their big dino guy in the terror tank, especially when you're trying to get them to sit somewhere. They're like constantly like juggling and dancing around, trying to find the best space to sit and pushing each other out of the way. Um, I mean, it's still, it's still early access, but I would hope to see them try to clean that up a little bit. I know with Tempest Rising, we had something similar in our betas too, where units just wouldn't stop trying to get to the middle point. And it led to some, little dance parties on the map.
Right. Yeah,
But
yeah.
it would be
I've
nice to
had
see them clean
some
that up.
I've had some small issues with pathfinding. I mean, it's functional, right? It works, it's smooth, but what it doesn't do is surrounds, and I miss that so much from my Zergling abuse. um, I just love when melee units are competent at cutting off retreat paths of enemies and just absolutely get to surround them like that. And I really try to reproduce that. I try to spread my my grass basically, right, and just try to set up something like that, and it just never worked because everyone's soaped up and slippery. It's not
I
it was
love that
never gonna
description.
happen.
That's funny. That's good. No, I like that. Soaked up and slippery. Um, yeah, no, that's a really good way to say it. And I know there's a decent number of melee units, and it feels sometimes it's harder to use them than it feels like it should be. So yeah, I think that's and they've got time to clean it up, but I
Mhm.
think that should probably be a priority. Um,
And as far as the macro mechanics go, if you don't mind me stepping back there for a moment,
Absolutely.
I'm personally overwhelmed by this game. Like, I'd rather be worrying about my 80 drones than five global mechanics at the same time, right? It's too much. I feel like we're trying to do Age of Mythology, Warcraft, Starcraft at the same time. Uh, yeah. Does the game really absolutely require talents, heroes, top bar powers, mercenaries all at once? I feel like it's a little bit of the everything soup kind of game design that is going on right now.
I don't. Maybe it's a bias here because I like a lot of the individual pieces of what they're doing. Like I like the mutually exclusive upgrades. I think that's really cool. I think over time they've gotten the mercenary selection into something that I think has a lot of potential. I'd actually like to see them add more mercenary factions over time. Um, I think they're going to have to think about how they balance them because there's a lot of functionality in those factions.
It's
Um,
just so much cognitive load, you know, and to go in as a new player and try to learn it. So I think it's really important to understand that I go in as someone that peripherally knows the game, right? Like I'm not good at it. I'm okay at StarCraft. I'm not good at this, but I go in and I know how to macro everything, right? That's not a problem. But what I don't know is what everything does, and because there is so much content already with four factions and people that have played early access for 2 years, sorry, make that 4 years, that is a slaughter. So how do you make it so that someone new goes in there and doesn't have their face melted down by the existing player base?
that's definitely true. So one thing I feel like ZeroSpace is trying to do is create a game that has slightly lower APM requirements than StarCraft. A lot of units have passive effects, passive abilities. There's a handful of active abilities, especially with Zol. I keep accidentally building an army that's like all active abilities.
Or work for you.
So I select my army and then there's like 12 abilities going across and I'm like, oh crap, I should probably use these. Um, which actually is something I think is as a game designer I've run into where what I've noticed is as you try to decrease the frequency of active abilities, it feels like instead of making it easier, you're making it harder. So if you've got a lot of active abilities, you get used to using them. You're looking for opportunities to use them. Your brain is kind of primed for it. But with ZeroSpace in particular, I keep having to remind myself because so many like with the Legion, most of your units are just have passive abilities. And then I go over to Zal and I'm like, I've got this wall of actives. Um,
Isn't this
and in
just
some
too
ways, it
much
makes it
cognitive load,
harder.
though? Like, especially if you layer on top of that the active abilities, and that includes your hero. There's the capture points to worry about as well. It's so much. Like, no, I can't think of a
I don't know.
single other game that went this broad with mechanics.
I was gonna say I don't feel like it's more cognitive load than Warcraft 3,
Really,
for
but Warcraft
instance.
3 has tiny armies, and the actual units have very few abilities, and there's no
But
other
in
additional
Warcraft,
mechanics.
my personal issue with Warcraft 3, as a player, is you're trying to manage growing your economy, um, keeping tabs on your opponent, teching up with this whole other gameplay thing of creeping. And it's just that becomes like I'm doing too many very different things at once. Um, with ZeroSpace, I feel like a lot of it is just you kind of just want to have your army near something. So it's mostly just moving your army. After the very early game, a lot of it is moving your army and using abilities. Um, but I just as an example, I'm not sure that with the player leveling system with the mutually exclusive upgrades, I'm not sure removing that improves the game. Um, it's a one decision you make every 45 seconds to a minute and a half or something. And you're picking between two things. I mean, usually one of them seems like an obviously better choice, at least at the moment. Um, but I'm not sure that removing that system reduces the cognitive load of the game and makes it easier for people to play.
Mm.
Um, in some ways, I almost feel like it would be better if there was on the map anyway, if there was more as opposed to less. I think I said this earlier, where you've got like 3 or 4 POIs with the towers you're fighting over on the map. If it was more focused on that, it would keep you and your opponent in the middle of the map longer, and it would just be more about fighting. I feel like what ends up happening is someone wins the middle, and then it just keeps pushing, and then the game's over.
I've
But
seen an incredible amount of blobbing myself. Like, I personally try to do a little bit of multi-prong, just to
part of that is
stretch my legs,
map
but
sizes and shapes. I feel like right now the current 1v1 maps are pretty small, and I feel like
mhm.
the way that the game units move, these larger units and big armies of large units, it probably would be better if there was less up and down terrain and kind of fewer corridors and more kind of bigger, more open spaces. Um, because it feels like StarCraft maps with units that are often 2 times larger than StarCraft units. Um, so you get kind of this unit density issue where you've got these, especially with the Legion, I feel like, where you've got these the big dinosaur guys and the big terror tanks and the big dreadnoughts. Um,
they obviously have to go together. Like, you need some lower tier stuff to go multi-prong and get stuff done,
right, but it's
or
also,
air.
some of these units are most of the size of the ramps. Uh,
True.
right? So it's different when you're I mean, you've got like things that are twice the size of an Ultralisk trying to navigate these StarCraft size ramps. So I feel like probably as they mature, they'll maybe they should look at their map design and see what they can do to encourage play that works better with these larger units.
Do you think when you have units that large that's generally resulting in better gameplay? Because I'm kind of
I
worried
mean,
about a
I
tier
would
3
think
army
that they would
size.
want to personally I would want them to shrink them. Um, the big dinosaur guy, the terror. I think they could easily lose a quarter off the volume of these things and not have any. It would probably just make the gameplay feel better. Um, and that giant crawler that the Protectorate has, the six-legged crawler thing that they can load units into, that thing's massive.
Yep.
It takes up so much space on the screen. Generally speaking, I think probably would be better. The game would feel less clunky if they shrunk them. Um,
They kind of feel super Unity to me, but they're not super units. They're just uh, a little bit clunky. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, I think clunky seems fair. Um, but yeah, I'm not sure I'm fully in agreement with you on the cognitive load thing. But again, maybe it's
Hmm.
just because of my bias and liking all of the different things that they're doing, and my brain's already primed for that stuff. Um,
I guess there's an aspect of just accepting that it's excessively difficult to do all the things properly on time. And, for me, that definitely hits a nerve of, oh, I'm not doing this well enough. Feels
well,
bad, feels bad.
I think it's fair to say, because you and I are like old hands at RTS. And if we're debating whether or not it's too much, someone like my kids or my dad are going to feel completely overwhelmed if they go into a game. And there's all these things to keep track of and remember. So I feel like there may be something to that, but I'm not seeing particular systems that I say, I really wish they didn't do this because it'd make the game flow better.
Yeah, I
Um,
mean,
I think the big thing is that I don't know. I could have a conversation about the top bar, because that's kind of snowbally. It is a bunch of extra, pardon the pun, overhead.
ha ha ha.
Ha 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 ha. Yeah, dad. I get one dad joke per episode, right?
Well done, sir.
um, and I know the last match I played, I was kicking myself the last half of the match because I was like, I screwed myself out of all my best abilities because I picked all the worst upgrades. Um,
Well,
and that's
they
part of that would just be familiarizing yourself with the game more. But
Yeah, they certainly don't have to listen to my need to pop the balloons at the correct timing in the correct way. But if it's hard for someone like myself, I can only imagine how hard that would be for someone newer that also wants to do things roughly correctly and not slide on one of the systems as they play.
so thinking about it a second time, I feel like maybe the issue is that it's trying to do all these things and also doing them at StarCraft's pace, more or less. You're fighting almost from the very second you come out the gates. You've got these small maps again where you've got units in your opponent's base very quickly. If you had a little more breathing room, if it was even a little slower paced with larger maps, it would feel less frenetic, because it's not that you're doing all these things, it's you're doing all these things very, very quickly. Um, so I think there may be a bit of a mismatch there potentially, where you've got this fast paced game, with all this fighting, and then you keep forgetting things because you've just spent 45 seconds uh, resolving a battle that you
That's right. Typically, the more complex RTS games tend to
slow
slow things down. I mean, just look at
things down.
something like
Yeah,
Spellforce 3, which has 5 resources, right? And you've got a very complex hero, which you have to itemize for and whatnot, and all these creep camps to take over, massive maps, more workers than you can possibly manage because they aren't directly controlled, and you have to build all these buildings for them, upgrade the bases one by one, and then make more buildings. You're all over the place the whole time, and in in a 4-player map, if you play a 1v1, you just absolutely fall apart. Everyone does. Even the very, very best players will have like 20 idols in the 50-minute late game stages, and it's fine. Because you are also rich at the same time. You can afford to wait a little bit and fix it later. It's not that much stress, but it's a much slower paced game. The units don't murder sauce each other in 15, 20-second battles.
yeah,
The heroes, while strong, they don't absolutely dominate those later phases. And here you got the global powers dominating. Like
especially in
if
the
you
late
get
game.
carpet bombed and you eat it, well, that's the last thing you're gonna eat. um,
Yeah,
because the other guy can just theoretically roll you, right? Because of the small reinforcements distances.
right. So, yeah, I think not an insurmountable problem, but we'll have to see where they go from here with what they're doing. But I think they have a lot of interesting ideas, but I don't know. I'm the kind of guy that I like little fiddly things to think about, and for me that forms part of the faction identity. Not just necessarily what the faction's good at, but what they have to focus their attention on. Um, and that kind of is the weave that makes up the gameplay. And right now, I feel like many of the factions, their basic approach is pretty similar, even if their units are different. Kind of the you're making the same decisions, more or less, the same types of decision. Um, I hate to use my own game as an example, but for instance, with the Tempest Rising, with the Dynasty, you're constantly going back to your base to think about, what plan am I going to put on, or am I going to turn on and off my distribution mode of my power plants. You're very focused on power and infrastructure and economy. I've got to move my Tempest rigs for GDF. A lot of it is, what do I have the intel for? Am I going to spend this to tech up? Um, do I have comm sources? Am I going to use this ability now, or I'm going to run out of money if I use it potentially? So the thoughts that go into the faction are very different. Where I feel like in a lot of ways, with the Zal is my biggest exception, because you've got all these little fiddly guys and you can pop them into things, and that's not something you're doing with the other factions. You're not taking your tier 1 units and putting them into things. At least that gives you a different thought process for playing them. I feel like a lot of the other factions, you're making the same sorts of decision, um, the same like categories of decision a lot of times.
Hmm.
And that's a personal thing for me, I think. But
No,
um,
that's an interesting thought. You know what's going to really matter for them long term? We're not going to get into this in this episode, but it's the campaign. Because right now, um, well, however good their offering might be, depending on personal opinions, they don't have a lot of players, right? Like it's not retaining the players because it's kind of cutthroat. They've got this early access base that has already learned the game in great detail, and nobody really wants to go up against that. They are promoting uh, esports style events, and
mhm.
that might be rubbing off not so great on people. Uh, I generally think I mean I love tournaments, I love esports, right? But I don't think it's the way to get the masses to play your game. It's what you do after the masses have supported your
Yeah.
game, just in general, and then you throw them a big event, not to tell them about your event. That it's kind of chicken and egg kind of situation here, and I think it's
Well,
the wrong way around right now.
and you can easily watch a game and appreciate something like a competitive tournament without actually playing the game. Like there's a lot of people that would just, okay, I might watch a ZeroSpace tournament if I think it's going to be interesting and good, but that's not necessarily going to lead to me playing it.
Yeah.
Um,
And that doesn't mean that they shouldn't give the creator some money to play an event, right? Like that's fine. But it seems like a core marketing piece, and I haven't seen anything about the campaign anywhere. So I guess when they have a little bit more content, we'll come back and look again and actually talk about their story in focus, because they wanted to do something akin to Mass Effect, where you have meaningful
right.
choices that like shape your progress throughout the campaign. You'll be able to build relationships with the other characters.
Hmm.
I think they even have some romance option stuff and whatever. So
Yeah, but you're right though. I think doing something like that is going to be a real selling point that's going to be able to bring in people to play and replay the campaign, to get invested in the world. I think that's important. As we talked about when we were talking about Stormgate didn't really do that. They were focused on, cool factions that look cool and do cool things, and nobody was really invested in who the Celestials were. They had a couple of characters, but there was no context for them. Um, the Vanguard campaign didn't really pull a lot of people into the universe. Um, and I really feel like for a game, it's very important to get people emotionally invested in the characters and the factions,
That's right.
and the story.
Build that world, and get people absolutely invested into that,
Yeah,
because that's the way people will start caring about the game, not by watching, Pig versus Hearthstone. As much as I like both.
yeah, and it's tough because we're both multiplayer guys.
Yes.
Like, I love watching tournaments. I love playing on ladder, but eh, like I feel like we've seen over and over again, you can't really build a game based on that. You build a good game that gets a lot of people, and then you keep them with the multiplayer stuff.
Yes, and a lot of them will just try multiplayer because they've liked how everything looks, how everything feels. They maybe
Hmm.
watched a campaign run, maybe they've played it themselves. Doesn't mean necessarily that people would transition that way, but you can capture existing RTS players that way. That's an interesting
Right.
part, I think. Okay,
Excuse
I
me.
think we can pretty much call it here, Brandon. Right? Like any closing thoughts, any big advice?
Again, I'd like to say that I'm impressed with what they did. I feel like it's a good start. They've got a lot of interesting features. We didn't even talk about things like line draw, where you can like draw a line on the map when you've got units selected, and they kind of go to fill it out. Um, I don't personally think that's a big thing, but I know a lot of RTS players like that.
It is nice.
Um, I Before we started the episode, I said that I was going to mention this, but I feel like as RTS players, we see a lot of people wanting a lot of things from their games. The list of what it takes to make a complete RTS, I miss my air quotes, complete RTS in someone's mind, um, is constantly growing, and budgets aren't getting bigger. Um, and I really feel like I'd like to see more studios try to start with a good, solid foundation and build on that. Trying to do everything all at once, I feel like it really leads to stretching your resources thin. We saw this with Company of Heroes 3. We saw this with Age of Empires 4. We definitely saw this with Stormgate. I'm concerned that we're seeing something similar happen here as well, where ZeroSpace has a lot of strong ideas, but they've got a lot of stuff they have to build and finish. Um, and until all of their stuff is built and finished, there's going to be people who have problems with the functionality of these things. And that's a tough position to be in for a studio. I wish them all the best. I'm happy to say that I really liked the idea of their sub-faction system. And as someone who already was primed to like it, I struggled with it in the earlier phases of the beta. I'm pretty happy with it now. And I was really skeptical of the Zol. I was, on record saying I thought that it wasn't going to work out, but it's become, pretty much my favorite faction so far. So I'm excited to see where they go, and I really wish them um, all the best.
Good. That's great. I likewise think that what we have there is not bad at all. I think it's gonna be actually pretty good by the end of the early access. I just repeat my message about world building and getting players
Yep.
invested
Hmm.
into what ZeroSpace is going to be all about, right? What's that story that you want to tell? Because people need something to latch onto.
Hmm.
Um, as
Yeah.
much as I love the multiplayer, that has to be the start.
Yeah. I agree.
Cool. Then you guys can follow us pretty much all over the interwebs. We've got full control of all the platforms. No, we don't, but we are on all the podcast platforms, and we're on YouTube, of course. So if you want to subscribe there, that's great. We've got a Ko-Fi where you can drop us a tip if you really enjoy this episode. And we both have Discords and all other social links down in the description area. So feel free to check those out. We'll be back with more. There will be more Zero Space talk as well in the future. Probably some Dawn of
We
War
got a
stuff
lot
at
of stuff.
some point soon, right? Because it's so close to release. I'm looking forward to that.
I know. very much so as well.
That's right. See you there, everyone. Bye bye.